So why do people practice? Why have people taken up the meditative path, the Dharma path? Traditionally, the rationale has been not so much adjustment, but enlightenment, liberation, awakening. And interestingly, like meditation practice, Dharma reflections they're relevant, like I feel they're relevant across the entire spectrum of human well-being. And so the teachings are relevant when life is excruciating, and they're relevant when life is good enough, but something in the heart feels incomplete. And they're relevant when there's a good deal of happiness, but there's still some sense of friction with the universe. And so traditionally, like the aspiration is for something, liberation or enlightenment gets called different things. And the question is like, what is that? Religious traditions, especially ones with long histories, like they saw that life is quite difficult. Even when things are going pretty well, life can be difficult. And I'm just imagining back then, some thousands of years ago, when the average lifespan is half of what it is now or something, and disease was like completely not understood, and the various like natural forces were not well comprehended. It can feel like being besieged by life. And many different philosophies and practices, religious traditions sprung out of this. It feels like, in part, like a response to the intensity of being human. And there seemed to be like a deep preoccupation, quite understandably, with the fact that we are mortal. And so the psychiatrist Irwin Yalom said, death anxiety is the mother of all religions, which in one way or another attempt to temper the anguish of our finitude.
Who said that?
Yalom. Well, yeah. And I think what we have in a lot of Buddhism is like a sense of, with the human condition, like a little bit like it's I want out. That's the spirit of it. It's like this is not redeemable, And there's a certain kind of grim kind of estimation of human life in a way. And just a sense of like there must be more. There must be a way, in some sense, out of the human condition. That animated a lot of practice. Now it sounds like very kind of pessimistic, and that's not exactly my experience of being human. But I know what they're talking about, right? Who doesn't know about the experience of just like, get me out of here, right? Like and here being everywhere, Leonard Cohen said, he said, "I don't consider myself a pessimist. I think of a pessimist as someone waiting for it to rain, and I feel soaked to the skin." Now, generally, enlightenment's been framed as a kind of discrete experience, as or maybe series of experiences, but it's generally considered like something happens, and that changes everything, or changes much, or grants a kind of permanent access to an understanding or wisdom or something that relieves suffering. And it's usually associated with like a non-ordinary state of awareness. That it sometimes described as like a recognition of something that seems like it's been there all along, just waiting for us, but is itself born of like a non-ordinary state of awareness. And it's usually associated with kind of like direct, unmediated access to truth. Now, I don't think we have to grant that, but the way that freedom's been depicted is that it's like the culmination of seeing in the ultimately clear way. And that the modes of awareness that are free somehow grant deeper access to truth with the capital T than our ordinary consciousness. It's been associated often with a kind of dropping of our conditioning, breaking through conditioning, somehow getting outside of our conditioning, and accessing something like, primordial or something. That's often the language that gets used. Here's a quote from Adyshanti. If you prefer smoke over fire, then get up now and leave. For I do not intend to perfume your mind's clothing with more sooty knowledge. No, I have something else in mind. Today I hold a flame in my left hand and a sword in my right. There will be no damage control today. For God is in a mood to plunder your riches and fling you nakedly into such breathtaking poverty that all that will be left of you will be a tendency to shine. So don't just sit around this flame choking on your mind, for this is no campfire song to mindlessly mantra yourself to sleep with. Jump now into the space between thoughts and exit this dream before I burn the damn place down. It's a tiny. I will. Yeah, I'll find a way to do that. It's a tiny bit manipulative, but it's so badass, you know. Yeah. But you get the sense, like it's usually, enlightenment's usually characterized as like having a very destructive element, that it's not actually an act of creation, of manufacturing anything. It's not a cultivation, a development. It's actually like we let go and we let go, we let go until there's nothing left except everything. Now, like understanding this, there are like many kind of complexities and controversies about what constitutes freedom, and it's quite telling that many teachers will when they hear certain experiences, they're actually quite cautious about weighing in on the significance of what's unfolded. And I was told by somebody that one of the kind of senior, very influential Burmese Sayadaw, U Pandita, who many Western teachers have practiced with, that he would actually want to see people's behavior for several years before he would actually say yes, this is freedom. And there's a certain kind of power to that at some level, in my mind, the proof of the meaning of an experience, how deep it is, how liberating it is entirely in how it transforms our behavior towards more wisdom and less harm. Now, there are a lot of questions that are provoked in this, and I can't answer them. Don't have answers, and don't have enough time to get into it. But the first is really is the moment itself what does all of the work? Or is there something about the cultivation and all the energy and effort and insights leading up to that that is as good or almost as good? Is the experience, is freedom a kind of dichotomous, yes, no? Or is it always somewhere on a continuum? Does it grant access? Does freedom, is the way we get more free by accessing truth more deeply? And is freedom a way of getting cleaner, clearer access to what is true? This is a teacher of mine, Shinzen Young. Almost all the mystic masters of the past have claimed that the experiences they have in contemplation reveal directly the nature of the real world. The 20th century British philosopher Bertrand Russell wrote the classic essay, Mysticism and Logic. In Russell's view, such all-encompassing claims based on mystical experience are philosophically unjustified. The mystic may learn things about the nature of experience that are useful, important, and not known by most people, but the nature of objective reality is the purview of science and science only. In general, I tend to agree with Russell. Now that's one view. For some people, Yeah, I have a friend, Dharma teacher, and sometimes when I speak kind of like sort of more humbly about enlightenment, or like with less grand language and a little more skeptical about what kind of access it grants us to truth or something like this, she says that she just gets like unbearably sad, And for her, like, so much of the path is about a kind of magic and experience that somehow transcends or is outside of scientific kind of materialism. And that is more than just like subjective experience. And actually we see like amongst the most kind of popular teachers, meditation, spiritual teachers, they almost all fall on that side. There's grandness. What is the relation between enlightenment and behavior? Some traditions say that like post enlightenment, it becomes like impossible to waver ethically. Not that we never cause harm, but that the sense of like there's such a deep fundamental alignment with ethical intuitions that that life is, there is the bliss of blamelessness, to use the Buddhist phrase. Now, I'm trying in my own heart and mind to make sense of this and to kind of piece together what seems like maturity on the path to me. And one way of talking about it is enlightenment, but something that a mentor of mine, Gil Fronsdal, he speaks much more frequently not of liberation, but spiritual maturity. And it's something I really appreciate, that phrase, spiritual maturity. So I wanted to like propose something of like a model for what spiritual maturity looks like, at least from my experience in practicing and being with practitioners. While I am skeptical about mystical experience testifying to the truth of the universe. Its value, the value of that for our subjective sense of well-being and our understanding of ourselves is like undeniable. So I'm not actually making a claim about the world, about what truth is, but at the level of our experience, it is quite profound to know that it's possible not to suffer. And the difference between a small amount of suffering and the suffering completely flatlining is quite dramatic. It's like it is as if like some the experience, like if there was like a diesel truck idling right outside, and then at first you're like really annoyed by it and you're just like please cut the engine, please cut the engine. And then we keep going, and I tell you just like be mindful of sound, and you're just like, okay, all right. And then it kind of like starts to fade into the background, and it sort of like just becomes like a fixture of mental, emotional life, and we sort of acclimatize to it as if getting used to a different altitude or something. And then it like, the engine cuts off, and we realize like we've been living with like so accustomed to an ambient level of restlessness and incompleteness, and the engine goes silent, and it feels different, very different to be alive. And so a part of our path, I believe, is the heart is transformed. I don't think by just certain kinds of experiences, but by a fairly wide range of ways of being in the world where there's less and less friction. And the sense of like the moment being just the moment, and what is given in it being representing a certain kind of perfection. So this is one component, but there are more, for me at least, in thinking about it. The second piece is that when I think about spiritual maturity, I think about becoming increasingly sensitive to harm. It's been like, it's something that I've mentioned at some point before, but like it's been, a period of some years ago, it was quite heartbreaking to feel kind of betrayed by teachers where there seems to be a great deal of wisdom, but that wisdom was fully compatible with predatory, harmful behavior, and it messed me up. It's like I had thought that I was already disillusioned, and then I was like, and then it was like, no, there's actually something else to let go of, And for me, it scrambled something in me, because I was like, how is it that freedom is compatible with that depth of harm? And that harm casts a very deep shadow over whatever it is we're calling enlightenment. And whatever that is, that may be beautiful, but that is not enough. And so, my feeling is that just the more deeply still and silent we get, the more like sensitive to the kind of the heart wavering from our deepest commitments. Like you can just like, things just get quieter, you can just feel like the lack of alignment with our own ethical commitments. And you can actually feel like that hurts. Like it actually hurts. It's not guilt, it's not some trip in one's head about being nice. It literally hurts. And so it's not an effort ultimately, like the ethics precepts is not actually ultimately a renunciation. It's just beautiful. And the last piece I want to highlight is, there are these notions that they're inspiring for some people. I find them a little dangerous, which is that that the path has an end, and that there is such a thing as a kind of perfection of wisdom. And I don't dispute that people can be very deeply free. Like, this life is utterly transfigured, But I can say, for myself, like, I never want to stop looking out for my own delusion. It's unimaginable what that wisdom would be, where I could actually fully let down any sense of like questioning my own assumptions and conditioning. Because the truth is, like, we always think we're right until we realize we were wrong. Okay? Right? Yeah? Kind of. Like, because if we thought we were wrong, we'd change it to be right. Right? Like, I don't think I'm like using wordplay, right? Like, we base it, right? We just kind of like, that's our assumption, is like we're given the, like, yeah, I'm right. And that is the nature of delusion. And so, for me, it's like, the grace with which we engage our own delusion is like a central aspect of being free. And part of what practice does is I think it transforms the kind of process of waking up to our own delusion. It transforms that from being humiliating to being humbling and inspiring. And we just actually delight in more and more. Let's just sit for a moment. Just letting all the words fade out. It's not possible to practice for oneself without also being of benefit for others. So may this be so. May our own goodness spill outwards and be a cause of more safety, joy, and ease in the world.